Alright, we are back with another episode of Is It Pay to Win? For this one, we're not tackling one game or two games, but an entire genre on mobile. For our episode, I want to talk about if the mobile idle RPG is pay to win or not. Idle design and idle gameplay have become one of the best kind of like time waster zen-like games that one can imagine. From the major names like Cookie Clicker, Cow Clicker, Idle Heroes, AFK Heroes. There's more idle style games I think I've played than most people have even witnessed in their entire lifetimes. I've played some involving bugs and paper clips and spaceships, and even one that was a factorial like, which that seems like could very well do my existence if I ever go back to that one. But the mobile genre really took to idle RPG design, and there are a ton of them. Before I made this video, I've played at least 3 or 4 in like the last year. And games such as Memento Mori, Street Fighter Duel, AFK Arena, many other ones are in or fit into this. So does AFK Mori Fighter count as a pay-to-win game? Well, as always, let's start with the general design. As we've said, idle gameplay in of itself is a very interesting, and it's a lot harder than it may sound in order to do it right. These are games where you set characters up, teams, warriors, robots, bugs, whatever we want to say, and let them go. In the kind of like minimum or on the small side, the player has no engagement with the party. They go on the field, they fight, win, lose, okay. On the higher end of the scale for kind of idle RPGs, the player may be able to dictate things such as when to use special powers. And these games love to have like very flashy, over-the-top special moves. Sometimes it may even go into like its own kind of cinematic cutscene. And that is kind of like the extent in that respect. These games are not designed around being very gameplay intensive. And I know some people are going to argue with me on that point. We'll come back to that in the back half of this video. But the games themselves are always set up around essentially the power, your team's power, team's composition, being the ultimate dictator at the start of who will win in a battle. And one of these games have really copied or have really been inspired by the idle genre in of itself is layers and layers and layers of progression. And progression in this respect can mean various things. So at the basic level, you're leveling up characters. Okay, level 1, level 5, level 50. Okay, we all know that. Then these games will oftentimes implement a secondary progression of gear. Characters can wear different swords, shields, pants, jeans, shorts, whatever we want to describe them as. They come in different levels, rarities, and so on that get more powerful. Then there's even more progression. These games will oftentimes unlock a third tier. It could be like a special artifact, special thing that you may even have to craft or have its own summoning or roll system on. In Street Fighter Duel, one thing you unlock is the power to equip cars to the various fighters. Because I guess Guile really needs his Hummer. But wait, there's more. These games will oftentimes have even more progression as you get higher and higher in level. And one of the major things about the idle RPG genre is that account level is a very huge aspect of these games. That they will tie specific unlocks, specific systems to the account level, and some may even tie this to game progression. In Memento Mori, several of the game's more advanced systems of progression are locked until you either spend enough money for their VIP system and, oh, don't worry, we'll come back to VIP later, or you reach a certain level completion. And what these games have done, or what they do really well, is that they really get the idle system of just this kind of rapid or peaks and valleys of progression. When we talk about traditional idle games, again, the cow clickers, cookies, and so on, progression is very much along the late game end. It's very much like lopsided there. When you start playing an idle game for the first time, it's very slow, very ponderous. The first time you're going to kind of prestige or re-roll or restart your account cookie clicker, that can take a good 3 to 5 days, or even more so, of playing. Once you do that, it becomes easier. 3 to 5 days may become 2 to 3, then 1 to 2, then maybe 18 hours, 5 hours, 2 hours. And these games understand, or they really give you that sense of scale, the dopamine of numbers. I don't know if I'm going to have any video footage of these games in the corner over there. I may just have a ticking number, just to give you that sweet, sweet dopamine of watching this video. And again, it's very addicting to see progression grow. I do 20 points of damage, I do 8,000 damage, I do 15 billion damage, I do 875 quintillion damage, and I'm sure a few of you are just salivating as I'm describing numbers right now. Now, for the idle RPG side, what they do is they front-load rapid progression. When you start playing these games, you will just rapidly make progress for the first probably 30 minutes to an hour, maybe the first 2 to 3 days of playing this game. It's going to be okay, I'm level 1, now I'm level 15, now I'm level 30. We go from 500 damage to 7 million damage very fast. And you will unlock the basic systems of progression very quickly. And whenever a new system is unlocked, that will give you a brief period of rapid progression as you add those new elements to your characters. Once you unlock the new artifact or the new super weapon that you attach to your character, they'll go from, power level 300,000 to maybe 900,000. And then you'll have that very brief rush of, okay, I'm just beat every single level very easily. Then you get stopped again. And what you find in these games is that when you hit a wall, you really, really hit that wall. Because remember, player investment or player engagement is kept to the minimum, if at all. If your party just smacks into that enemy and they're dead, there's not much you can do. So when you hit that wall, it doesn't seem like there's any more ways for you to go. But there's always going to be things just out of your reach to try and pull and roll. And a lot of this discussion is going to be on how the monetization facilitates the progression, and we'll be talking about that in kind of the second part of this video. But to stay on the gameplay, again, these titles really push the idea of party compositions. AFK Mori Street will always have different characters. There will always be different factions, different rarities, and this is again used as a way to control the player's progression. Some of the more advanced examples of these games will kind of have different summonings, and the summonings are tiered to different grades or rarities. So when you start playing, you have the low level gacha. So this is maybe, 1 to 2 star characters. Once you hit a certain level, you unlock kind of the middle tier gacha. This is 3 to 4 stars. Then maybe there's a 5 star. And then there's a 6 star. Each one will consume different resources. Each one will cost different amounts of money to roll. And they will each have different summoning rates and things that you can pull off of them. And these games will also, like any kind of good gacha game, or shall I say, good gacha game, will have limited time banners with limited time resources that will have exclusive characters, and don't worry, we'll get more onto that one in a few minutes. But with all these systems in place, they will always have kind of the same basic DNA of how you're going to even power characters up. So these games will have, at minimum, 3 different experience resources. And yes, for RPG fans or RPG designers, you're gonna love to hear just how many things you have to keep track of. There's always gonna be a generic currency resource. Gold, stars, money, power, whatever you want to describe it. This is going to be earned through the idle play. This is used to basically buy some basic things in the shop. It's oftentimes used to promote characters. Then there is the actual experience currency. This is what is going to be used to level up your characters, level up your swords, whatever is going to be the primary progression. Then there is always a third resource, and this is kind of like a gating resource. This is what is used to ascend, promote, upend, however you want to define it, a character. So the character goes from like tier 1 to tier 2, 3, 4, 5. Some games will even delineate this even further down and say, now we're at tier 1. Now we're at 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. Yeah, you're at tier 2 now. 2.1, 2.2, and you get the picture. And this resource, the cost to do this for a character, progressively gets more expensive as that character levels and ranks up. Now here's the very dirty little secret here. Some of these games will tie leveling to this system. And when they do that, it oftentimes is tying to these special characters. So one of the things that Mori Fighter does is that they lock the different skills and passive unlocks to these gating thresholds. And this is a big deal because these games will have like dramatically different abilities, or characters can really come to their own once they hit these thresholds. But of course, it becomes exponentially harder to do so. So that takes to another element these games will have, and that is the ability to kind of ascend or match characters to your highest party. You see, the thing about these games is that as you unlock more and more characters, it becomes obviously very hard to keep adding or keep getting resources to level everyone up to 500, 1,000, or so on. So what they'll do is they'll have a system where the lowest level characters can have their levels scaled to whoever is your highest or your highest team. So that in theory, you only need to level 4, 5 characters. But you see, the twist is that when you tie the different rarities, the different ranks, and so on to level caps, it means that having 4 1-star characters doesn't mean anything if they can only level up to level 80, where the real cap could be level 300 if you have full SSR, whatever we want to define as the highest. So before we kind of get more in depth with how the monetization becomes a factor here, I want to talk about why these games work so well. The kind of idle RPG genre, AFK fighter, Memento, whatever, they are oftentimes really well designed in terms of their UI. These games, they have to be very easy to control, very quickly to do something. Memento Mori, when I played it, the UI is probably one of the best I've seen from the genre. It lets you do a lot of stuff very rapid fire. Now, of course, the game has literally no gameplay interaction, which I guess kind of helps when you're trying to design the UI and the UX for it. These games oftentimes will, again, have really expansive and explosive aesthetics, really popping looks and visuals and stuff like that. Because again, they're trying to keep someone invested and engaged. So they'll come back and check it every day, every few hours, and so on. And these games, again, they have, at least at the start, very low engagement. Pick up the phone, click a few things, watch numbers go up. In fact, I expect from you watching this video right now, I want to get to at least 10 trillion subscribers, and I want 3 quintillion comments by the end of this video. I'll keep raising that number up there just to keep the point going there. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's time to talk about how monetization factors into all of this, and whether or not these games are pay to win or not. But before we do that, if you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, then be sure to check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. Alright, it's finally time to talk about if AFK Street Memento is pay to win. And what kind of idle fan would I be if I didn't min-max and optimize this video? The answer, of course, is a resounding yes. Now, what makes these games pay to win is very different from some of the other examples we've talked about. Some that are more gameplay dependent, more gacha focused, and so on. As we said in the last part, these games are built on the idle design, which means that getting more characters, getting an SSR, whatever, it's not the same kind of pool as we see in games like an Arknights, Olympus, Azur Lane, and so on, where that character brings with them unique abilities, unique ways of using them, that are then there to, again, tie into your team, group, party, raid, whatever. So there's several different aspects of this I want to focus on, and let's start with how the gacha defines progression. As I said in the last part, a key aspect of these games is promoting, leveling, ranking, building these characters up to become more and more powerful. And in order to do that, you're going to need multiple copies of them. And what some of these games will do is that they will typically have a smaller character pool compared to other kind of gacha style games. But in order to really use a character, you need to keep promoting them, which will require you to get more shards or more pools of said character. So in a game like Street Fighter Duel, as an example, your characters can either start at grade C, B, or A, if I remember right. Now, in order to kind of promote them one time, you need the duplicate of that character. So to go from B to B+, you do that. Then to go from B+ to A, you're going to need duplicates of the same kind of faction, or in Street Fighter, the element of that character. That takes them to A rank. Then to go from A to A+, we repeat the cycle. Here's where it gets very annoying. The amount of characters that you're going to need is going to become exponentially higher and longer to promote as you get further up. So even though the highest you may pull on a banner is an A rank or SSR or whatever, there's oftentimes 5, 6, even more levels or ranks above that. And for a free player, the chance of you getting a character to full rank, I'm talking the very tippy top of the progression, is going to be very limited. So maybe there is someone out there who got incredibly lucky and they pulled all, characters, all the same character in a single 10 pull. But most likely you're not going to be that lucky. And with the whole kind of gacha system, it's going to get harder and harder to get the specific characters that you want, or in many cases that you need. Remember, if you are trying to get 4 or 5 characters as high as you can go so you can then have everyone else sync up to them, if you don't pull those characters, the vast majority of your character pool are going to be useless, because you're never going to be able to get them to that same level that you need in order to use in all the content. And that's the other point. These games really drive the monetization through their content. There is always going to be multiple systems that you're going to play with. Some that will require, let's say, a specific element or faction type. Maybe one that will require 4, 5, 6 times a normal party in order to play. So the more characters you have, the more content you can do. The more content you can do, the more resources that you can get. And this is where there's kind of a fallacy with these games. These games are oftentimes very rewarding when it comes to all their different modes and different ways of playing. It is quite possible to get a lot of summoning currency, upgrade materials, and so on, simply by doing all the modes that the game has available to you. But if you're a free player or one that's not spending a lot, it's going to take a very long time. And I mean, some of these games, it can take months to do something that a pay player can do in a day or two. And that is to the point. Monetization in these games is oftentimes about time about time over money. That if you don't want to spend 6 months grinding content to raise your character, just give us $49.99 and we'll give you amazing equipment. In Street Fighter Duel, during their first month of being open, you could spend $50 to get a character that can be pulled in the gacha, who is considered one of the best characters in that game. So that in of itself is a literal pay-to-win aspect of it. And these games love to have limited time offers and special sales and unique purchases that will jumpstart or rapidly advance accounts. And they will throw them up sometimes multiple during the week. If it's a seasonal thing, definitely. Whenever there's a holiday, you know there's going to be a special bundle. When it's the summertime, there's going to be a special bundle. When it's the winter time, or end of the year, or half year, quarter year, maybe once a month, these games will love to have these sales. And another reason for that is these games love to have a VIP system. So the VIP system is something that we haven't talked about in this series yet, but it's one of the more closest analogs to kind of the gratuity of casinos and gambling. Many casinos will have kind of high roller lounges, high roller memberships. If you spend enough money, you get comps on your card, which lets you get, free meals at restaurants, or you get exclusive suites. And again, they're there to make you think that, well, it's okay for me to gamble $10,000 because I can now, have 3 free nights at the hotel or in the casino. And VIP systems work along those lines. They will unlock a variety of quality of life features, things that will make it easier to play the game the more you spend money. And VIP levels get progressively more expensive in order to keep going up each tier. So in Memento Mori, as an experiment, I spent $6 because I was curious to see just how high in the VIP would I get for that. And I got to a whopping VIP level 2.5. And I mean 2.5 out of 15. In order to go from that 2.5 to level 3, I would need to spend another, I think it's $14 to $15. So that would have meant going $21, $22 to go from level 1 to level 3. And I can guarantee you that getting from 10 to 11 or 14 to 15 would probably cost several $100s at minimum to do. And VIP systems are definitely one of the easiest and surefire ways to spot a pay-to-win game, because you are literally spending money to gain unique advantages to make the game better to play. And it kind of goes back to a lot of the older MMOs when they first went free to play, to kind of lock essential quality of life features behind their paid service. Anyone who remembers DC Universe Online, where they limited your inventory and how much money you could even hold unless you spent money in the game. And again, fun pain is not a good way to design any of these games. Now, to go back to the gacha systems of these games, a new thing that I didn't even realize they were doing until I started playing more of these games in the last year is that they now tie additional gachas to their monetization. As I said in the last part, these games will oftentimes have different tiers or different gacha banners related to the player's progress or to what kind of characters they can pull. In another game that I played, there was at least there's 4 different normal gacha banners, and each banner corresponds to different rarity tiers. So you literally, as a free player, can't pull on the most expensive, super fancy banner until you hit a certain level. But you see, each banner has its own gacha summoning resource, and each gacha summoning resource has a different price of premium currency. But you see, it gets even better than that. For these games, they will oftentimes tie the highest of the highest character ranking to a different kind of gacha banner. And these banners oftentimes may not even allow you to use premium currency. You may only be able to spend real money to pull on these banners. So a new thing that some of these games have done is that once you hit a certain level, they will unlock kind of like the Tier 2 banner. So the Tier 2 banner works like this. When you roll on this banner, you will be able to literally decide what banner character you want. And again, when I say what you want, that is if it actually had you pull for that 6-star, UR, whatever. So that rarity rate may only be 1%, 0.7%, 2%, whatever. But you see, here's kind of the catch. In order to actually do a pull on this banner, the cost per pull is oftentimes 2 to 3 times higher than it would be to roll on the normal banner. So if, let's say, it costs 2,000 currency, whatever, to do a normal 10 pull, this banner will require, let's say, 4,000 or 5,000 premium currency to do the same thing. So some of you will argue, well, if it's guaranteeing you that you can get that character if you get that lucky pull, then, what's the big deal? But again, as a free player, it might as well just be 20 billion currency, because the chance of you being able to pull on this on a regular basis or any frequent basis is very low. In another one that I played, this one, as soon as I hit the level threshold to unlock the UR rarity, it all of a sudden flooded me with advertisements and promotional banners for, here's our brand new character, you can pull on it right now. Except as a free player, you literally can't. You cannot even buy premium currency, or you can't even use premium currency to buy the tickets to pull on this banner. The only way to get more copies, other than the one a day, is to spend money. And I can guarantee you that there are people who probably spend $50, $100 minimum just to try and pull on these banners. And that takes me to another point. Because some of you, as we've said before, the allure of a gacha banner is that if I spend one ticket, I could get that 6-star character. I've done that several times in Arknights with just some very dumb luck. Just as someone could spend 500 pulls, 1,000 pulls, and maybe not pull that character. It's supposed to be, I guess, fair in that regard. But you see, in these games, a lot of them will use what's called a shard summoning. So what this means is that when you pull on these banners, the top reward isn't getting that character. It's getting shards that can add up to unlocking that character. So that even if you get that mythical, one ticket, I get the gold prize on the banner, that gold prize may be 5 shards. And you may need 55 shards just to unlock that character. But wait, if you want to rank that character up to their next tier, you may need additional 40 shards. But if there's a tier after that, you may need additional 60 shards. And as you can probably tell, as a free player, the chance of you ever getting to that point is probably so low we don't even have a number for it. Because even if you do get lucky, if that first 10 pull you do get the gold reward, guess what? You may only be a third of the way to getting just the basic version of that character. And remember, this is just for one of these super high class characters. You'll need to do this for every character that you're trying to get to the highest level. And remember, even though promoting characters will make them more stronger, the higher rarity characters at their base level will always confer more benefits, more things. They will have they'll have a higher power ceiling than those lower rarities. So even if you do take 5 C rank characters all the way to their max level, that is going to mean nothing if you go against someone who has one fully ranked, A-star or SSR character. And this takes us to another point about these games. As I said in the last part, they are designed around like peaks and valleys of progression. And a major point about this is the first month of playing these games. In that first month, you will be flooded with free resources and daily events and new player challenges and so on. They're going to give you a lot of stuff. They will probably give you enough to make several 10 pools in that first month. But whatever comes from those 10 pools is going to define your entire account going forward. In Street Fighter Duel, as an example, if you are someone who is able to pull M. Bison on your very first day or your very first week of playing and nothing else, your account will go from here to there instantly. If you don't pull M. Bison, if you don't get a top tier character, your account is going to be here. And again, the more power you can bring through the monetization, the more rapid you can progress. The more things you will unlock, the more things you can do to get you more resources, to get you more power. And again, if you don't do that, these games become such a slog to play, and that's by design. They want to always have that idea in your mind that, well, I'm stuck. Let me go do another 10 pull. Let me go do another relic pull. And if I didn't mention this in the last part, let me bring it up here. Remember when I said these games will have a second or even a third progression system? Usually one of those progression systems has its own separate banner, with its own separate rates and its own separate rarity systems. So it's no longer about just pulling a really good character at the high level. Now you need to pull a really good relic, or in Street Fighter's case, a really good car. And then that bumps those characters up even higher. And you see in these games, one super stacked character is infinitely better than 5 just okay, or even just 5 great characters. And the reason why takes us to a point we haven't discussed yet. PvP. You see, one of the major standouts, or one of the most major systems in any kind of idle RPG-based game, is PvP. Not just one PvP. These games will oftentimes have 3 to 4 different PvP modes. And each one has its own ranking system. It has its own resource you get for climbing it up. It has its own requirements. So these games will have, like I said, they'll have different ones, and they'll usually go like this. The first PvP is just 1v1, or one team versus one team, depending upon the game. The next tier is multiple teams. So this is again where having more characters in your roster will give you more of an advantage. So now it's, you'll need 9 characters, maybe 15, maybe 20 characters in order to even compete in this mode. Then there is a guild, or faction, or whatever is kind of like the group system in your game, PvP. So this is where the guild versus guild option will come in. Memento Mori has that kind of mobile strategy game thing where, different guilds have different kingdoms, and the kingdoms can attack each other and take each other's resources. And again, one very expensive person or a whale can just basically do all the work of a guild onto themselves. But you see, the reason why these PvP modes really matter is that what they will give you is premium currency. And you see, this is the subtle trick of the pay-to-win aspects of these games. When you look at kind of the ranking systems in these PvP modes, they will oftentimes do something like this. Like, let's say you're not even able to get a reward until you're in top 5,000. Then we'll go 4,999 to 4,000. Then, 3 to 2, 2 to 1, and then we'll go like 1,750, 500, and then of course we have like the top 10. At the top 10 in these PvP brackets, you will oftentimes earn daily enough resources to do multiple pulls on the banners. As I said earlier, a major point about these games from a progression standpoint is that rapid progression in that first month. For a lot of these games, when they open their doors or open their servers for the first time, the whales will oftentimes rush in and spend lots and lots of money within the first few weeks of play. It's why these games oftentimes have incredible month 1 revenue. Because they know that if they can become top 3 on their respective servers within that first month, they're going to be earning tons of free resources that will allow them to make more pulls, which will let them make more progress. So for a lot of these games, the rich getting richer mentality is certainly in effect. If you are number 1 on that server, most likely you may not even need to spend as much money on month 2, or even fewer money, or less and less as the game's life goes on, because you're just constantly earning free resources. But again, it then becomes that much harder for someone new to try and play these games, because you're not just dealing with someone who's been playing for a long time, you've been dealing with someone who's been getting free premium currency day after day, who's been making all the pulls and all the summons, and their entire party is fully ranked up, and there's not going to be much you can do as a free player to get around that. So I have 2 anecdotes for this point. So the first one is, I remember I caused a mobile game designer and a mobile game journalist to run away metaphorically on Twitter. Kind of similar to Ramin's story he's told me about when an executive ran away during a hearing about monetization. They were arguing about why most people don't treat mobile games with respect and why they should be a credible esports. And they pointed to this article that the journalist wrote about, I think it was a Clash of Clans tournament, where not one player had to spend any money to get into that tournament. So I asked them one simple question on Twitter. How much did these people spend lifetime to get their account to that level? And they never respond to that point, because it would completely destroy their whole aspect of these games. That, yes, you can have super high level play in them, and I'll come back to that point in a minute. But to get to that section as a free-to-play player is almost impossible. Now, the other point I want to mention again about how much spending money rapidly boosts accounts in these games. In Memento Mori, when I was playing it, I decided to go up against an enemy team who had the exact team composition as me, but with fewer characters, and their overall power rating was about 500,000 points fewer than mine. So I thought this would be an easy win. I completely lost. And I lost like this. Match starts. The character on the enemy team attacks one time. They crit for about 50 million damage apiece to my entire party. One-shot the entire party. They didn't even get one attack off. I just kind of sat there blinking my eyes for a second going, what? So the game allows you to view kind of like the characters on the opposing team. So I viewed it, and this person had on their version of my character every single kind of like critical chance, critical damage, buff, gem, whatever on them, on every single piece of their gear. And I can tell you with 10 zillion% accuracy that this person was not a free-to-play player. Because you literally do not get enough free currency to get characters to that level. You need to either spend, or you need to be playing this game for either like a year or two, or you spend a lot of money to do that. And that kind of just really ruined a lot of this game for me, and a lot of these kinds of idle RPGs. Because again, it doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter how great your team composition is, if someone can just spend $500 and have a, build an unstoppable team idea right there. And these games will oftentimes gate their progression, that they will have major walls in terms of their main campaign or their main progression, that you will either need to get incredibly lucky, have a friend that you can pull a character from, or spend money to progress. In Memento Mori, the wall in that game was, I think it was like stage 928. So it's with this character who's like this adorable looking angel with a tragic backstory, and there's beautiful music. And when she attacks, she just kind of like waves her hand like this. And when she waves her hand like this, she does about 30 million damage to your entire party and will one-shot them. Yeah, not so adorable. So you may think, well, let me just build a better party to fight her. Well, you see, for this fight, and only for this fight, this character can hit 3 party members with a single attack instead of 1. So you may think, well, if I get her down to 0, then I win, right? Well, no. When she hits 0, she gains an invulnerability shield and becomes immortal for 3 additional turns. And I'm just sitting there going, could they give this character any more advantage over a free player? And the best part is you need to hit chapter 11 in order to unlock like the next progression system. Or you spend, I think, enough to get to a certain VIP level. And like I've said over the course of this whole section, so many of these games are just entirely synced to their monetization and pay to win. So before we get to the conclusion of this video, I want to again stop one comment that if this video does get out there and hardcore fans find they'll come and attack, they're going to levy the same defense. That there is depth to these games, that team composition matters, and that you can't just spend $10,000 and become the #1 player on a server. But you see, here's where this kind of defense breaks down. The depth of these games only exists at the highest level of play, or more specifically, the highest spend of these games. To put this in another form, this is like when we talk about Grandmaster play in deck builders, or CCGs and TCGs, where we don't have to worry about if player A doesn't have all the cards that player B does. Everyone has access to all the same cards. Now it's about building credible and legitimate strategies and decks out of them. So that when you're playing a game like Fighter, Memento, Arena, AFK, if we're talking about, the top 10 players on a server playing against each other, now there is depth here. Now you actually have to build your teams to manage each other and manage the strengths and weaknesses. But again, the problem is that the vast majority of players who will ever play these games will never be able to reach that level of play. It kind of goes like this. Level 1, depth's involved. Then it's power, all the way up here, and then we're back to depth. And when we say depth, that still is going to require characters or players to pull for the latest characters to get everything fully ranked up, which means, of course, spending lots of resources or spending lots of currency. And a lot of these games, when we talk about like the highest level play, it's basically just whale wars at that point. That was something that Rami and I spoke about on several of the games that we were checking out in the past, that when we're at like the top 5, top 3 of these servers, you need to spend, and these games will court those whales in order to get them to compete against each other. And again, it's why PvP play is such a lucrative aspect of live service and free-to-play games. Because as long as you have 2 people jockeying for position, they're going to keep playing, they're going to keep spending. And it's just going to be an endless thing to see who will be #1 this week. So to wrap things up for Idle, AFK, Memento, Street, Arena, Fighter, Idle, the Idle RPG genre oftentimes is the most purest example of the progression and how monetization can tie to rapid advancement. In many ways, playing these games is akin to empty calories. You're not playing these games for a full course meal or a 80 to 100 hour challenging experience. You're playing them to watch numbers, to watch more numbers to go up, to get access to more numbers and different color numbers, to see even more numbers go up, to raise your character number up, to get more level numbers. And again, if any of you are like drooling on your keyboard right now as I'm describing this, I apologize. But it's also why these games are some of the most blatant example of pay to win. And some of these games go even more extreme. In Street Fighter Duel, in the first like 3 months, they put out several banners of limited characters that you literally cannot spend premium currency to get. I think the first one was like Monster Hunter Ken. And then they eventually allow you to spend premium currency at like double or triple the price to get access to these characters. And of course, these characters are of course even higher tier than everyone else. And for the person who gets them and gets them fully ranked up, they're going to be in a far better position. And the song and dance continues month by month, banner by banner. And for the people who stick with these games, they will become hooked. They will play them daily. They will spend monthly. They will do all the deals. Because it's kind of like that in for a penny, in for a pound mentality. That once, if you can get your account to top 5 on that server, you can just kind of coax and just get all those free premium currencies and people can't chase after you. But like we've said, how many people will ever get to that point? So for those of you watching this, are there any examples of idle RPGs that buck that trend? And did any of you get hooked on the endless chase of numbers and more numbers and so on? Let me know in the comments down below. If you have a mobile game you'd like me to tickle for a future entry in the series, let me know. Do all the YouTubing stuff, make my numbers go up even higher and higher. Be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.